Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Today I have my guest, Jaclyn. Jaclyn, thank you so much for being here. I'm really super excited to chat with you because you were referred to me by a previous guest, and I love to ask my previous guests, who would they love to have on the show? And your name came up, and so I'm really excited to talk to you. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is almost a little surreal. Like I, a year ago just started, searching about this stuff and ran across a podcast and, kind of like honestly got inspired by listening to your guests, and I just can't believe here I am sitting here.
That's
great.
Awesome. I love to hear that. I did not start this podcast for that, but now that seems to be what I hear, and I'm so grateful for that. It's like a bonus for me. I love sitting here and recording, getting to know you guys better because there's only one of me, and I see people on social media, and that was why I started the podcast. It's like I see what you're doing. I want to get to know you. Why don't we sit and have a conversation and record it? And then it became, everyone really started to love hearing other people's stories. And I know I love to hear other people's stories, but I didn't realize just how much other people needed that. So it's just been a blessing. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
So tell me where in the world you're coming from right now. Where are you sitting?
I am sitting in Lowell, Michigan, which is just outside of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Probably the biggest city. And I work, downtown in Grand Rapids. So
in Grand Rapids. Okay. All right. So have you always been there? I always ask this question. Have you been in the same city your whole life?
Small little hour and a half radius. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Kalamazoo, which is another, when people say Michigan, they've heard of Kalamazoo before. Yeah. And then moved to Grand Rapids for college. Right after college, I moved over to Lansing, which is the capital of Michigan, and then back to Grand Rapids for a different job, my current job.
Right. So all kind of in that area.
Yeah. But okay. All Michigan. Yeah, Southwest.
Yeah. I have been there a few times, and I bring this up every once in a while, but I play hockey. I'm 52 years old and I still play hockey. But I've been to Michigan for nationals to play in these national tournaments. And that's the only time I've been there, but
Where at? What city?
Lansing, I've been to. Okay. And then I could not tell you off the top of my head the other city. If I could tell you based on a hoodie I collect hoodies. So I used to collect them from all of these tournaments. So that's the only way I can remember what cities I went to.
How about this? Can you do the Michigan hand and point?
Yes. I know where the UP right is way up there. Up there. But I couldn't tell you on the map where they were.
That's okay.
That's such a disappointment. But I have been there probably 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, but always great experiences. I loved it there. Nothing bad happened.
It's beautiful. Can't complain. Yeah. We've got, true 4 seasons. I love the winter, but it just makes summer that much better.
Right. Do you get a humid summer?
No? It depends. Yeah. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So. Yeah. Well, that's nice then. If you could say that, it's hit or miss. Great. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, so you've been in that little radius for your whole life. Now, did you always want to go into nursing? What was that like for you? Tell me a little bit about how you decided to go to nursing.
Sure. Honestly, from the time I was a little girl, I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't necessarily know what kind, it kind of fluctuated throughout the years. It was either that or something with design, which I do both now. So that's awesome.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah, nursing was always at the forefront. I love talking with people. I'm a very caring, empathetic person, and it was a good fit. My grandma was a nurse. My grandma and I were very, very close, and she would always tell me these funny stories of her and her nursing friends and things that they got into with patients. And it's just, yeah, I want to do
Stuck
that.
with you. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask, usually if, just based on all these conversations I've had, if you have wanted to be a nurse since you were little, there's usually someone in your family that was in nursing that you got to experience, those kind of stories around, and they fit. So that makes complete sense, which is probably why my daughter will, and she's going to nursing school next year. I'm excited for her. Okay, so you decided that this was for you.
Yep.
So you go to nursing school right out of high school?
I did. Yep. So I went to Grand Valley State University, which is in a city called Allendale, just outside of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
They had a great nursing program. It wasn't too far from home. It was like just far enough, to move away, but still be close. And I went right through.
Yeah. Did you have a great experience in nursing school? Did you love it? Was it something that you expected, or was it like eye-opening?
I can't say that anything specific stood out except for the great friendships that I still have with classmates. Actually currently work with one of them. It's great. He works as a CRNA on my floor.
Wow.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of everything in nursing school. You don't truly learn the ins and outs of being a nurse until you're actually doing it. So, it's what I expected. Everyone says, "Oh, it's going to be so hard to get in. It's so hard to get in." And it was. I was definitely that person that retook a class I got a B+ in, so I could get an A in.
Right.
But nothing really stands out. It's
yeah. It was what you expected. That's great. Okay, so then going through nursing school, since it was only, you do get just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Did you already know what you wanted to do as far as what specialty you did?
Yeah. So I know I said earlier, it kind of like fluctuated on what I wanted to do. I thought it was going to be neonatal nurse practitioner.
Okay.
Ask me where it came from. It was just, I love babies.
Sounded good. Yeah.
I thought that I wanted to be an advanced practice nurse, and that's just what I was dead set on. And I think sometime maybe my senior year of high school, it's like, well, what about labor and delivery? And then that really got affirmed for me in nursing school when I did my rotation. It's just, those goosebump moments where
for sure.
you're in something, you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And from then on, it stuck. And really, I found myself like really digging in the pathophysiology in my class. And it's just, all of it is just interesting. What the human body does in the birthing process is, I could read about it all day. So
yeah, you definitely found your niche. It's funny that you say that, because I just thought of something that stuck with me. So just recently, it's very rare we get, I don't know if you remember your nursing school, but you probably had 1 or 2 days in the operating room, and that was it. And that seems to be the case. So we get nursing students that come through the OR, and they just kind of stand in the wall and they are like a deer in the headlights. It's very rare that someone has one of those goosebump moments.
Yeah.
But recently I was assisting in a case, and it was a robotic case, and the lights were off, and the students sitting in the corner, and I just kind of keep my eye on, make sure they don't pass out.
Right.
And what I like to do is they're looking at the monitor, and I'm sitting there at the bedside assisting while the surgeon is on the console. And I like to kind of explain what's going on the screen and the anatomy of it. And this one nurse in particular just recently was like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever.
Like
So it
now.
was very clear that she had that goosebump moment, which is so rare. I never really see it. And then it turns out, I don't know, a couple months later, she's in the OR. And I said, do I know you? Because they come and go, right? Do I know? She said, yes, I was in your case and you were showing me that. I'm doing my externship. I'm in my last year of nursing school. I'm doing my externship in the OR, which we never get any students in the OR doing their externship. And I was so excited that she had that. I very vividly remember her going, oh my gosh, this is where I want to be. And it's just so rare. So it's funny that you say that, because that's exactly what I watched her do. And it was so cool to see that.
But how cool is that you were able to do that?
I guess. I mean, that's what I love. I love to explain things for people, and not everybody is, willing to listen.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
But it stands out. But it stands out, yeah, for sure. And the fact that she was there and she, was like, oh, I've gifted the love of the OR.
It's so important. I know some nurses kind of roll their eyes when they see the crew of nursing students, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just in the mood. But
right.
For the most part, I truly love teaching, and I love giving those oh my gosh, this was the best day moment.
Yeah, it's so rewarding, and it just comes few and far between, I think. But I think also us as legal nurses, because and you said you could read about it all day and every day. Mm-hmm. I think that us as legal nurses, we're natural educators, right? We don't want to be the educator on the official title of educator, because we still love bedside. But I think we all are natural educators. And it is those moments that stand out that you're like, oh my gosh, they have the light bulb. There it is. And that's what makes it totally worth it. And just getting them to understand things. And I think we naturally have, I think every person I've talked to that has been in legal nursing has said, I love to educate people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you really have to do this job.
Well, yeah, of course.
That's a big portion of it, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. But it is something that we wouldn't necessarily have said on the surface, like, oh, what makes you a great, I suppose people do say that, what makes you a great legal nurse.
But it's not at the forefront, really.
No. But if you were to poll all of the legal nurses and ask them if they love educating, my guess is that everyone would check yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's an interesting fun fact about it. Okay, so you decided this is what you wanted to do. And when you finished nursing school, did you get a job right away in labor and delivery, or
I did not.
Like for you? Okay, tell me.
So kind of crazy. I really considered going right from nursing school right on for an advanced degree. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, I know I want to get more education. I could just go to midwife school.
Okay.
And I actually was all signed up, ready to go down to Vanderbilt. They had this co-program of family nurse practitioner and midwife.
Okay.
It was a pretty incredible program, but the speed of it honestly scared me a little bit. It was so much for such a short period of time. Yeah. But I really started thinking maybe I should just make sure that this is what I really want to do before I go and spend all of this money and feel like now I have to do this. Right. Why don't I just get some regular nursing experience? Yeah. And then, if it's still there, if I'm still feeling I want to do it, okay, I'll go back. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that I followed that.
Okay.
Right off the bat, I couldn't get a job in labor and delivery. I think it's kind of changed now. We take a lot more new grads than we used to, but actually, funny story. I was visiting a friend who had just had a baby. We were finishing nursing school. I still remember it, the postpartum room. And I said something to her nurse, I would love to work here, asking her questions. And she kind of laughed at me and was like, oh, you'll never get in here as a new grad. And I was just like, oh, watch me. Yes, I will.
Yeah,
So,
challenge accepted.
yeah, I didn't, not right away. I ended up
Mhm.
going, this is when I moved to Lansing. I did like a nurse residency program at Sparrow Hospital. It was really cool. I got to go around to different floors. It was like a 12-week program. It was kind of like an interview process. You're interviewing the nurses, they're interviewing you. You spend about a week on each floor, and just kind of see where you fit in, what you like, what you don't like. And then at the end, there's interview process. And I ended up, I guess, matching on a neuro step down floor.
Interesting.
Which I am still fantastic friends with my very first preceptor.
Yeah.
From years ago. And, it was a great, great first job. I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah.
It was like a little bit of everything. It wasn't quite med surg. It was a little bit higher acuity, but I really learned how to prioritize things, time management, handling a sick patient,
Sure.
Yeah. But I also knew as I was, getting further into it, like, this isn't where I want to
forever. Yeah.
be. Yeah, it was very taxing. I mean, God bless med surg nurses. Like, it's truly a difficult, hard job.
Right.
And I just was ready to kind of explore the labor and delivery path, and a job opened up back in Grand Rapids. So it was actually a job for being a postpartum nurse, which is not something that was ever my passion. But I thought, okay, I'm going to interview for it because, I'll start there. It'll be my foot in the door. And then someday I'll get to work there. Totally. I was willing to do that.
Right.
And then when I sat down with the manager and she was like, wow, you really have a passion for labor and delivery. Are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, well, no, I want to do labor and delivery, but here I am. Like, I'm willing to wait. And she said, well, let's just start you in labor and delivery. And I was like, yes, okay.
Yeah. Best decision ever. Yeah. So. I love that because I think that, it's taking the risk in knowing that, okay, this is we're like one step closer, and then you were just gifted with
I was totally gifted. It was great. Yeah. So awesome. That was 2011. And I have been there since.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. I love hearing that story. Okay, so this was clearly your passion. You've been doing it for a long time. Had you gone up the ladder, up the nursing leadership ladder in your role?
I'd say I maxed things out in every way possible without going into, off the floor leadership.
Right.
So, became a preceptor pretty quick. Got involved in lots of, floor organization things, unit-based counsel,
decision-making things. Yeah.
Got my certifications. I've been, slowly getting those. I'm up to 3 now. I think that's it. I'm going to stop.
I know. Yeah. Right.
But yeah, I was kind of getting to the point where I was not bored, but just a little like antsy. Like, what else is left for me?
Sure.
Leadership is not where I want to be in the hospital setting. I love bedside patient care. I would just not be happy if I didn't have that, back and forth type relationship with a patient. So, I was kind of like, I don't know what's next. And
okay. So then, is that entering legal nurse consulting? Did that was the next step? How did that come about? So what did you know somebody that had already done it? What was that kind of?
Yeah. So funny side note is my dad is actually, or was, he's retired now, but a personal injury attorney.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I grew up, and I think, this actually did steer me into nursing too, is growing up hearing stories.
Right.
Just about this case and that case, and, obviously general details, but it was just like, wow, nurses do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I did say a long time ago, someday when I don't want to work the floor anymore, or I'm, too old, or I can't lift patients, or, I just need a break. Like, I would really like to get into legal nursing, and, seeing my dad in the courtroom was just awesome. I could do that someday.
Yeah.
But again, it was like kind of in the back of my mind, I'm still relatively young, wasn't ready for it, but life just kind of has, different plans. And about this time 2 years ago, my mom started having some like medical issues, and went in for a routine procedure and ended up tragically passing away.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was a huge just wake up call on what's really important in life. And like I said, I was kind of like twiddling my thumbs, like, what am I going to do?
Right.
Not sure what's next for me. And it was like, well, why not do something that you said you wanted to do?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, here I am.
So you were kind of kicked into like all of the signs saying, this is the direction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about your mom.
So, and the other thing is really, really hard environment to be in labor and delivery when you've just lost your mom.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I took a normal amount of time off work and went back, but like slowly found myself just lost. Like, I kind of lost the love for my job and my mom at the same time because of, circumstances. And it was really hard for me to hand over babies to grandmas, and just I found myself being a little bit bitter and like removed from it, and just this nurse that wasn't fully engaged anymore. And like I need a break. I cannot be here and be like this. It's like, I don't know who I am.
Right.
So I made a super hard choice to take a little leave. Just to, clear my head, do some healing. And that's really when I kind of developed my business.
Yeah. So you had decided to check out that poking and prodding of what between your dad and so when you decided to look into this, where did you start? Because I think this is kind of where I hear stories all the time about starting. A lot of people are starting right now, and there are a lot of listeners out here that are starting. So what did that look like for you?
Well, I think I'd mentioned Googling, and up comes podcasts, YouTube. Let's see.
Did you talk to other people? Did you?
No. I talked to my dad, obviously.
Okay.
Great resource, and he's the one that encouraged me. Like, why not now?
Did he give you any advice on getting started, or had he ever worked with nurses? I'm guessing he probably had. No. Okay.
He actually hadn't. Like, he'd worked with experts before, but I wouldn't.
Sure.
I don't believe he ever actually had hired a nurse expert. But again, my dad's older. I think that this, legal nursing, it's been around for years and years, but it's really more just, coming out into the light, I'd say, more recently. So he didn't have a whole lot of things to say on that, more of just encouragement. Like, you can do this. And I think something that really helped me is having a dad as an attorney. I tend to see attorneys different than a lot of people do. I think right off the bat, it's very intimidating to speak with attorneys. But I have that added benefit of just maybe. I don't know.
I think that's really good. I actually think that's really good that you mentioned that. And I don't think we've talked about that much on here. I think as nurses, this is my own experience. I think as nurses who had not had any interaction with attorneys before. It is very intimidating. I work with surgeons. I mean, they're as intimidating as it gets. So I knew that if I could work with them, I could work with attorneys, but I didn't know anything about how attorneys were. You just, what you hear and what the stories you tell yourself. And I've had such a great experience with attorneys in being, they're just like you and I, and I think that it's important to hear that, especially for those that are just getting started. Like you said, you had an advantage because your dad, you've been around that, and again, they're just like us, or they're just humans like us.
Yep.
But I think it was such a mystery when I started, that it is refreshing to hear that they really aren't intimidating. They are actually nothing like surgeons.
They really aren't. No, I totally get the surgeon factor. And again, said that to myself too. Like, if I can handle being in the operating room when in the face of emergency and handle the communication style that sometimes exists, then I think I can handle some back and forth with an attorney.
Yeah. So that was not an intimidating factor for you. Was there something that you felt like you kind of weren't sure about, like that you were nervous about, like, how am I going to get my first client? I mean, what did that look like for you? What were the kind of trepidations that you had when you decided to go down this road?
Honestly, I think I was my own worst enemy in terms of, like, you can tell yourself a story of how it's going to be and really get ingrained in that, or you can choose to, go all in, fully believe in yourself, and just no's not an option, have thick skin and go for it. And, not to say that there hasn't been vacillating back and forth, but for the most part, I stick with I can do this. I am doing this. And I feel like I was meant to do it. And
So it's really your confidence in yourself that has just kind of pushed you through. So
and I think to say to other nurses is, it's really not that different, right? You have the confidence at the bedside. You are reviewing the charts. You are, calling doctors. It's the same job in a different arena. Like, honestly, with a little bit less pressure, right? Like, there's not.
Oh yeah, no, I totally see that. You're looking at this with fresh eyes. You don't have someone looking over your shoulder. I think what I've found is that I don't think nurses really feel like they can't do it, because especially those that have been doing it a long time. Like, how many charts have I looked at? How many records have I looked at? It's really the business side of it. It's the marketing side. It's the how do I think that's where I see nurses being kind of terrified sometimes with that piece of it, because we're not trained to be business people. We're not, it doesn't necessarily come in our blood unless, your mom was a sales rep, like my mom was. And I was so funny. I was telling my mom, I was like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then years later, I ended up building a business and being really into sales. So it was in the blood, I suppose. But nurses aren't typically business people or entrepreneurs. And there is that aspect of legal nursing that I think intimidate nurses, the attorneys, and I think that piece. So talk a little bit about that for you. Were you nervous about that? I mean, obviously you're confident enough to say, I'm going to figure this out. This is what I'm guessing you're going to say.
But no, to speak to your point of we aren't business people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some legal nurse consultants I know that do have their master's in business, which is amazing.
Right.
But for the majority of us, we do not. And so that part, I would say, has been the most difficult, is just, it's kind of more of a figure out as you go. I'm sure I'm Like everyone's going to make mistakes with it, but asking for help.
Yeah.
That has just been the biggest thing is, connecting with people, reaching out, not being afraid to ask a question.
That, yes. That I love.
I am so not afraid to say, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And then, continue until I find the answer. I'm not giving up, but,
Right.
it's been a lot of self-teaching and, little bumps.
I think that's a really good point. I think because I like to correlate, like what nurses are used to and now. So you just said not being afraid to ask questions or saying, I don't know. We as nurses are really good at that because we know that if we assume something, then that's not how we work. We aren't afraid to ask questions. And so just you saying that, I think is like it's business, but it's still the same as what we're used to. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think what I see is that people freeze up and they just watch from the sidelines, and then they wonder why they're not getting anywhere. But I am a huge fan of just speaking up and being I hate the word. I'm not consistent, but it's really just showing up,
Maybe vulnerable is the right word.
Vulnerable is a great word. Yeah, absolutely.
Really, when you think about it, we all had to start somewhere.
Yep.
I mean, and the more you open up to someone, the more they're going to share like, oh yeah, I really am not sure about that either.
Yeah.
And once you do that, like the hard part's over, then you have a friend you get to work with,
Right.
So yeah, I would say just don't be afraid to ask because
So let's take that. So let's just say there's someone like you who comes across this podcast. They're brand new and like, okay, I have the confidence. I know what I'm doing. I can figure this out.
Yes.
But who do I reach out to? Who do I say hi to? Who do I ask questions to? What would that advice be for them?
Have a thick skin because there are going to be people that just ignore you. But I'm going to say that has not been the majority of my experience.
Yeah.
But if I would have let that one to, third person deter me, then what?
Right.
I wouldn't have made it to the many, many people, great nurse consultants that have really kind of, helped me grow and taught me and encouraged me. And I would just say, find someone that you read their story or look at their website or see their LinkedIn and you read something that resonates with you. Connect with them and tell them why. Don't just send them, oh, hi, I want to meet you. Like say why or tell them what you're looking for. And then from there.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I just had this thought when you said to reach out and as many, if you would have stopped in those first two or one that ignored you, that you would, you just keep going. There's this advice that I've always given my kids is you're a collector of friends. Which is funny because I'm saying this out loud and I'm thinking this out loud and I'm thinking this podcast is me following my own advice for my children is that you're a collector of friends. You keep because dealing with teenagers, it's like you lose friends and this person disappoints you and this, just keep collecting friends. You just keep collecting friends. And then if someone disappoints you, you have more friends. So I used to give that advice quite a lot to my younger child.
Yeah.
And so I think it fits in this too.
Yeah. There's different personalities too, right? You're not going to mesh with everyone, just like in any situation in life. 10 people are in a room, you may get along with 9 of them, but there may be that one person that you can still be acquaintance with, but you're not
Yeah.
going to go grab a drink with them.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Same thing in this community. Like there are a lot of great people.
Yeah.
Some I may not, reach out to
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Right. I do know that. I do know that too. It's true though. And unless you sit back and don't reach out, you won't know.
Hmm.
And I've met the most amazing people by just not being afraid to reach out. And I mean, when I started this podcast, nobody knew me for anyone. And people needed to trust me that I had their back
Hmm.
in telling their story. And so I had to be confident enough to say, hey, I know you don't know me, but I love what you're doing because there were things that I had connected with,
Yeah.
either what they were sharing or what they were saying. And then I had to build this trust that you're going to trust me to put your story out there.
Hmm.
And it was hard and I didn't know if they would or not, but I took the risk and I asked the question and look what happened. It's like we're at like 40 episodes later and it was those initial reach outs that nobody knew me.
Hmm.
And I had to just, tell them what I loved about them so that they would understand that I truly have their back. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing. Like, just tell them what you connected with them about, and they will. Uh, this community has really been
Yeah.
such a blessing in that we didn't know it existed, right? And then now it's just like, people are so willing to help
Hmm.
and it never feels like a competition of who's going to, I've got to, hoard my attorneys, those kind of things.
I think you bring up a really good point, though. There
Mm.
is that misconception.
Sure.
Um, and I think if you just really think about this as there is enough work for everyone,
Yeah,
sadly, there is.
I know.
Um, why not all work together? Like
Yeah.
when we work as a team, right?
Yeah.
We get better results. And so,
Everyone gets better. Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't view any L&D expert as, my competition,
Mhm.
rather like my colleague who I can learn from.
Yeah, exactly. I had a post recently where I was collecting um, CVs from
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
right. So because there's so many and everybody's specialty, I can't keep track. So I really wanted an organized way to keep track of people. I got this really sweet message from another OR nurse who
Mhm.
said, basically, like, I appreciate you taking my CV, even though we
Right.
have the same specialty. And it's like, we all need each other, I mean, I absolutely, why wouldn't I? But like you said, there is this misconception, or maybe it's just a story that we tell ourselves, like,
Maybe.
oh, there can only be one L&D nurse, there can only be two, like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, like you said, it's sad that there's enough work to go around, but that really is the truth. And we all have different specialties, we all have different timelines. Some people are busier. Some people,
Yes.
need to hand something off because they are too busy,
Mhm.
and this community is really just such a blessing that I know I had no idea really truly existed until
Yeah.
I started to talk. And this is the theme of every
Yeah.
podcast is just how amazing the community is.
Yeah,
So,
I think that I really, my eyes really started opening up when I went to the AALNC conference back in April.
mhm,
I met so many great nurses, and a lot of them are my friends now.
yeah,
And yeah, I didn't know it was out there, but
right,
it is,
right. I
and it's
love that.
great, and it's a welcoming, for the most part, community full of great, smart people.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so do you have any other advice you could give a nurse who is maybe they've already started, maybe they've taken a class already or they've taken a
Mhm.
course already, and they just kind of don't know what the next step is? What kind of advice would you give to them? I mean, we've kind of already talked about reaching
Yeah,
out and saying hi.
I think just taking it in small chunks. so that you don't get overwhelmed. On the business side, okay, you got to come up with a name. You got to come up with, like, I don't know, color scheme, all that branding stuff. I think do that in a chunk and then take a little break. And then, think about how you want to reach out to people. Think about how you are going to sell your services. Like all of that can be really overwhelming if you think you have to do it all at once.
Right. Actually, and I didn't ask you, how have you marketed yourself? Since we did talk about business, but I didn't even ask you.
Yeah.
Me. How do you market your business? How do you get your clients?
Honestly,
success been for you?
LinkedIn has been great. That's where I got my first case, was through LinkedIn. Someone found, an attorney found me and called me up, and I've now done a few cases with her. And then, I know she gave my name to a few people. I reached out to one attorney that I had actually heard on a podcast. I loved what she had to say. She actually wrote a book. And so I reached out to her and, sent her this, I guess, vulnerable, stupid message. Like not something that was like the everyday, hi, I'm a legal nurse consultant and I, would like to work with you. Yeah. It was like, there was some substance to it. And she responded right away. Oh, I love your message. And okay, we started talking. And then what do you know? She gave me a case. And then, she referred me to someone. I got a case. And it's just.
I love it. That's so great. I'm so glad I asked you. I can't believe I would have missed asking you that.
Oh, okay.
Because that's really helpful to hear. And the reason I say this too is that there are a lot of labor and delivery nurses, but you just shared that there's enough to go around, and the fact that they found you, on LinkedIn, when I know for a fact that there are lots of labor and delivery nurses that post on LinkedIn. So, everybody's
a huge poster. I don't. I find that wonderful that people do that, and I would really like to get more into it. But
you just prove that it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Yeah,
you don't have to. So I think that that's something for new people is like, just because it works one way for one person doesn't mean that's how it has to be for you. You get to make your own story, and you take pieces of that from there and pieces from here and make it your own. And that's kind of what I've done, and I guess really focused on forming relationships with people, because that's really where the meat and potatoes is of this.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. Okay, well, I appreciate you sharing your story, your journey, your advice. It's been wonderful getting to know you. I've really, really loved this. And so if you could tell everyone where they could find you, because I'm sure you'll get plenty of messages reaching out.
So on my LinkedIn, you can find me there. It's under Jaclyn Recker, but also my business name, Claudia Counsel. And then my website, claudicounsel.com, or my email is on there as well. That's really the best place, but reach out. I'd love to talk with anyone. I find it so flattering when people reach out. Again, like, I'd love to repay the favor. I have already, and it's so great to talk to new people and get to encourage them, because
that's awesome. Where did you get your business name? Where did that come from? I saw that.
Yeah. I wanted something a little bit different, not to knock anyone that uses their name. I think that's great. But so my business really formed out of what happened with my mom. And for a while I was thinking, how am I going to use her name? And then it just kind of hit me. My mom was very Irish, like 96%.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the Claddagh ring, but it's a symbol of, loyalty, and it's traditionally passed down from mom to daughter. So yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. I love that. And that,
yeah. And then we had good family friends. They went over to Ireland recently, and they brought me back a Claddagh ring. So
oh my God,
I wear it as a good reminder why we do this work and how important it is.
What a great story. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of that, where to find you will be in the show notes so that people can just click on that and find you and send you a message and connect with you. So
Right.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was
Absolutely.
really great to chat.
Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at anna.gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.